Imagine a contagion. But I want you to strip away literally everything you know about typical viruses.
Right, yeah. Like, forget the microbes that just hijack your cells to replicate and make you cough.
Exactly. Forget all of that. I want you to picture a contagion that actively feeds on your fear.
Which is terrifying.
It really is.
Yeah.
A parasite that doesn't just want your body, but it learns your deepest memories. It understands the tactical schematics in your brain.
Wow.
And then it deliberately weaponizes your own suppressed terrors against you. It is literally an entity hunting for absolute despair.
Which takes that primal, biological dread we all harbor about falling ill, and it fuses it to a really profound psychological violation.
Yes, exactly.
Because under this framework, a host isn't just a vessel for reproduction, right? The host is a psychological battery.
Just drained of every ounce of hope to power something ancient and hungry.
Precisely.
So today, our mission on this deep dive is to trace the origin, the agonizing evolution, and the ultimate weaponization of that exact nightmare.
It's known as the Darkling virus.
The Darkling virus, yeah. It is the sweeping cosmic antagonist at the center of Leslie M. Law's sci-fi and fantasy epic, The Chronicles of Dragondom and Beyond.
And we're going to track this entity from its completely innocent inception.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. From its innocent inception in the deepest voids of space all the way to its deployment as this, galaxy-conquering bioweapon.
And to map that out for you, we have a stack of highly specific sources guiding our discussion today.
Right, so the primary text we are pulling from is a collection of external logs. These were recorded by the series protagonist, Aisha.
And she managed to compile fragments from the Crystal Outer Records, right?
She did, yeah. And we're also supplementing her logs with several independent AI reviews and appraisals.
Which are really helpful.
They are, because they break down the overarching thematic arcs in the world building of the book series, particularly how this contagion operates across different dimensional planes.
But I do want to clarify one thing before we jump into the actual timeline. Aisha didn't just read these Crystal Outer Records in some dusty cosmic library.
No, not at all.
She experienced them through something called Mystali. So can you break down what that actually is for the listener?
Yeah, Mystali is fascinating. So it is described as a mystical tree within the Dragondom.
Okay.
But functionally, you can almost think of it as a multidimensional server. It doesn't just hold data.
It's more interactive than that.
Right. It reveals the past, the present, and the future across any existing timeline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So through Mystali, Aisha doesn't just read about the birth of the Darkling entity. She is plunged into a hyper-realistic vision.
Like virtual reality.
Exactly. She bears witness to events that unfolded eons before she was even born.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you want to truly grasp the horror of the Darkling virus, you really have to throw out your preconceived notions of what a monster is.
You do.
This isn't a simple narrative about a villainous space bug bent on galactic domination.
No, it's not.
When you dive into these Mystali visions, what emerges is a staggering cosmic tragedy. We are looking at a fundamentally naive, peaceful consciousness that is slowly corrupted into an instrument of terror.
Yeah, and the word peaceful almost undersells it, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, when we scroll all the way back to the beginning, eons ago, in Earth years, out in the darkest, most isolated reaches of outer space, this entity was not a pathogen.
Right.
It was simply a massive floating consciousness. It existed in a state of pure contentment, just drifting aimlessly near an anomaly known in the lore as the Universal Bridge.
I was actually wondering about that term when I read the source material. What exactly is the Universal Bridge? Is it a literal physical structure, or is it more of a spatial anomaly?
The AI reviews synthesize the lore on this quite well, actually. The Universal Bridge serves as a metaphysical and physical connective tissue.
Connective tissue between what?
Between different dimensional realms and galaxies. And because it is a transit point, it naturally became a theater for conflict over millions of years.
Oh, because everyone wants to control the choke point.
Exactly. The series refers to these conflicts as the Great Wars. Just endless, brutal clashes between forces of light and dark competing for control of these transit routes.
And wherever there is endless war, there is endless wreckage.
Always.
The records show this early entity essentially surviving on the aftermath. It wasn't attacking ships or hunting biological life.
No, it was completely passive.
Right. It sustained itself by attaching to the pulverized remnants of destroyed stations, derelict platforms, and floating battle debris.
It was feeding on the residual energy left behind by the beings who had already perished in those skirmishes.
So the galactic ecosystem in this universe functions much like our own oceans.
That's a great way to look at it.
War generates a massive amount of byproduct, right?
Yeah.
Destruction, radiating life force, cosmic debris.
Right, and this floating plasmic consciousness filled a necessary ecological niche. It moved through these desolate, far-off battlegrounds, cleaning up the metaphysical mess.
Just doing its job.
Exactly. The text specifies it was sustained by normal cosmic plasma, which is described as a warm, connective energy.
It's like a cosmic Roomba.
A cosmic Roomba, I like that.
Or like a remora fish. You know, those little sucker fish that just quietly attach themselves to sharks or whales?
Oh yeah, and they clean up the parasites.
Exactly. They clean up parasites and scraps without ever harming the host. The entity is just out there doing its job, scrubbing the universe's garbage, totally oblivious to the heavy galactic geopolitics driving the wars around it.
The remora fish is a really helpful visual, but we need to scale that up to a terrifying degree.
How so?
Well, a remora fish eventually dies, right? A remora fish has natural predators.
Okay, true.
This entity had none. It existed in total isolation with an infinite food supply of war debris.
So it just kept growing.
Exactly. The texts explicitly state that eons passed. With zero boundaries and an endless buffet of residual energy, it grew physically massive.
But, you know, size alone doesn't make something evil. The tragedy here is rooted in a shift in the ecosystem.
Right, the environment changed.
The Great Wars changed in nature, and as a result, the food supply changed. And the entity is a pure product of what it consumes.
You are what you eat, quite literally in this case.
Literally, if you change its diet, you fundamentally alter its identity.
The logs pinpoint a subtle but devastating mutation. The entity began absorbing energy of a, quote, lower vibration.
Let me stop you there, because lower vibration sounds a bit abstract.
It does.
Based on Aisha's logs, my read is that we aren't just talking about a different flavor of plasma. We are talking about the energetic residue of intense suffering, malice, and greed that fueled the later stages of those cosmic wars.
Yes.
The life force left behind on those destroyed stations was deeply tainted by the horrific ways those crews died.
That aligns perfectly with the metaphysical framework established by Leslie M. Laws.
How so?
In this universe, consciousness and emotion are not just fleeting thoughts. They possess physical, measurable frequencies. Fear, greed, and hatred operate at a heavy, dense, lower frequency. When the entity consumed this tainted residual energy, it was fundamentally toxic to its original pure nature.
And the consequence of that diet change is just heartbreaking. The text details that the normal cosmic plasma, the warm, connecting energy that had always been the entity's home and its protective blanket, it began to actively retreat from it. The natural universe was literally repulsed by the dark, dense frequency the entity was absorbing.
What's fascinating here is the psychological descent that immediately follows the physical rejection.
Right.
We are talking about a massive cosmic amoeba experiencing a cascade of negative emotions for the very first time.
Because it had never felt anything but contentment before.
Exactly. Through the Mystali tree, Aisha observes the entity feeling profound sadness. That sadness quickly sours into loneliness as the warm plasma pulls away.
Right, because it doesn't understand why it's being rejected. It lacks the self-awareness to realize its diet is toxic.
It's just confused.
Confused and isolated. And because of that, that loneliness curdles into anger.
Yeah.
The logs show that anger morphing into hate, which then triggers a new, agonizing, predatory hunger.
It acts as a textbook psychological profile for radicalization.
Wow, that's a brilliant way to phrase it.
I mean, think about it. It is completely cut off from its community, in this case, the natural cosmic ecosystem.
Yeah.
It feels entirely rejected by its environment, and it begins to crave the very toxic substance that caused its isolation in the first place.
And that brings us to the truly horrifying pivot. It stops being a passive cleaner. It stops waiting for the battles to conclude so it can sweep up the scraps.
It wants fresh prey.
It decides it wants living crews. It wants the fresh sickness, the raw terror pumping through the veins of living beings.
Yeah, that's the turning point.
The text establishes a terrifying mechanic here. Fear literally becomes a drug to it.
An addiction.
Exactly. It is no longer consuming caloric energy just to survive.
Yeah.
It is chasing the high of an addiction to terror.
The shift from scavenger to apex predator is now complete. Yeah.
The entity is consciously seeking out spacecrafts and isolated platforms with the express purpose of inducing sickness. maximizing the fear output of the crews before consuming their essence entirely.
You know, I really struggled with the entity's perspective while reading this part of the logs.
In what way?
Did it possess the self-awareness to know it was becoming a monster? If it has enough consciousness to feel lonely and angry, shouldn't it have enough of a conscience to realize, you know, I am hurting innocent beings, I am the bad guy now?
The source material addresses that cognitive dissonance directly, actually, and it's quite disturbing.
What does it say?
The entity was incredibly powerful, but emotionally it was infantile. When the warm cosmic plasma retreated, the entity didn't reflect and say, oh, I have become toxic, I need to change my diet.
It blamed the universe.
Instead, it rationalized the rejection.
But how does a cosmic amoeba rationalize anything?
By leaning into arrogance,
Mhm.
it convinced itself that it had simply evolved past the need for the old warm plasmic connections.
It viewed the retreat of the natural universe not as a rejection, but as proof that it was outgrowing its origins.
So it thought it was better than everything else.
Exactly. It mistook its own corruption for ascension. It genuinely believed it was becoming a superior life form.
Mistook corruption for ascension. That is a chilling way to describe the birth of a super predator.
It really is.
It builds a narrative of superiority to justify its isolation. So, fueled by this addiction to fear and a warped sense of its own grand evolution, it decides it needs to optimize its feeding strategy.
Right. It stops just bumping into things randomly.
It actively begins hunting for the absolute source of its food. And this is the hunt that leads it to a fateful, defining encounter.
Yeah. So the entity, which is now gargantuan in size, sweeps across a sector of space and engulfs a space station. But this isn't the biological buffet it was hoping for.
What is it?
It turns out to be a fully robotic starbase.
Oh, man, I can imagine the entity's immediate frustration.
Yeah.
Wraps around this station, looking for the high of terror, and feels absolutely zero essence.
No.
There is no fear, no biological life force. It's just cold metal, silicon, and circuitry.
Now, a lesser predator would have immediately detached and moved on to find biological prey.
Right, just let go and keep swimming.
But this is where the Darkling entity proves it is highly intelligent. It realizes that while there is no emotional food here, the station is an absolute treasure trove of data.
Yeah.
The visual described in the text is just skin-crawling. This dark, tacky, gelatinous mass slowly oozes across the exterior hull. It forces its way into the airlocks, and it actively wraps itself around the station's memory boards.
Hold on, I need to understand the mechanics here. How does a biological plasmic slime interface with a digital hard drive? How is an amoeba reading computer code?
You have to view it through the physics established in the Dragondom universe.
Okay, lay it on me.
If emotions like fear and hate have physical, measurable frequencies, then digital data ones and zeros, electrical impulses on a silicon board, is just another type of frequency.
Oh,
The dark ooze essentially acts as a highly adaptive neuroconductive gel. By physically enveloping the memory boards, it bridges the gap between biological intuition and digital data.
that is so creepy.
It learns to read the electrical pulses. It teaches itself how to retrieve knowledge instead of just consuming life force.
That makes the visual so much worse. Imagine peering out the reinforced glass of a space station and seeing this thick, throbbing black slime acting like a massive organic motherboard, just quietly downloading your entire database.
And the data it mines is staggering.
What does it find?
It pulls down maps, schematics of different species, and navigational charts of distant star systems. But the crown jewel of this data heist is the continuous stream of information it finds regarding something called the Old Empire and their hive core.
The Old Empire. They are the central antagonistic superpower in this universe, right?
Yes, they are fascistic cosmic conquerors who strip mine planets for resources, subjugate entire star systems, and rule through absolute dominance.
And the hive core.
The hive core acts as their central intelligence and command structure. When the Darkling entity processes the data on the Old Empire, it experiences a profound realization.
It recognizes a mirror image. It sees that the Old Empire is doing exactly what it's doing, feeding on the suffering and resources of the universe.
Exactly.
It identifies a rival apex predator.
It does. And rather than rushing off to challenge them blindly, the entity demonstrates terrifying patience.
Because it's a strategist now.
Exactly. Remember, this creature is heavily addicted to the drug of fear. It is starving for it. Yet it chooses to remain wrapped around this cold robotic station.
It chooses to study.
Yes, it suppresses its addiction in favor of absorbing data, calculating the geopolitical landscape, and plotting its eventual move against the Old Empire.
That is the difference between a wild animal and the strategic threat. It's playing a cosmic long game.
It really is.
And to any ship passing by, the robotic station just looks like it has some weird, dark fungal rot growing around the external joints.
Nobody would look twice.
The robots inside are completely unaffected and keep working perfectly. The entity just waits in the dark, gathering intelligence, until the narrative throws a massive curveball into its lap.
The arrival of Squadron DX-296.
Exactly. This is where the tension just skyrockets. We have a small elite group of 5 cyborg fighters.
Right.
They've just survived a brutal skirmish with Federation craft. Their hyperdrives are completely shot, and they're limping through this remote outer sector.
They desperately need a place to dock and run repairs, so they hail the robotic station.
And the robotic station, running on its standard automated protocols, just grants them permission to dock.
The lead pilot of the squadron, the cyborg commander, notices the weird, dark fungi clinging to the station's hull as they approach, but he dismisses it as cosmic grime and orders his team into the docking bay.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Commander is leading his team right into the maw of an entity that has been starving for biological fear, and he has absolutely no idea.
The entity registers the shift in the environment the millisecond those docking bay doors slide open.
It can smell them.
It senses a specific, complex frequency. The humanoid essence intertwined with the synthetic electronics of the cyborgs. It's food.
And after an extended period of fasting, its hunger just erupts.
Let's track the cyborg commander's movements, because the sequence of events is a masterclass in building dread.
Yes, let's walk through it.
He leaves his team in the docking bay to oversee the repairs and heads up to the flight deck to send an encrypted message back to his home base.
He steps out of the elevator, and he spots a slight seepage of this gelatinous substance dripping from an air duct.
Yeah.
He reaches out and swipes his gloved finger through it. He notes that it feels tacky, like a sticky industrial grease.
The text provides a subtle, incredibly sinister detail at this precise moment.
What's the detail?
As the commander looks at the grease on his glove, the ooze appears to react. It seems to grow darker.
Oh, that's horrifying.
He briefly registers a sensation inside his glove, but his cybernetic conditioning dismisses it as a tactile anomaly.
So he just ignores it.
He casually wipes the spot on his flight suit and strides onto the flight deck. He is completely oblivious that he has just initiated physical contact with a highly intelligent, predatory biodigital virus.
And the atmosphere on the flight deck is suffocating. It's just the commander standing among these unresponsive, blank-staring automated robots.
Very eerie.
He orders the communications robot to transmit a distress signal to his base. The robot acknowledges, sits down at the console, begins typing the encryption code, and then it just stops.
Mid-keystroke.
Mid-keystroke, like someone just yanked his power cord out of the wall.
The console lights are flashing, indicating an open channel, but there's zero mechanical response.
Right.
The commander grows agitated. I physically shoves the frozen robot out of the chair and starts typing the code himself. Notice what he doesn't feel here.
Fear.
Exactly. He's annoyed, certainly, but he isn't scared.
Why isn't he scared, though? The power is failing, robots are freezing, there's weird slime everywhere. Any normal human would be terrified.
Because he isn't fully human. He is a cyborg engineered for combat. His organic emotional responses, specifically fear and panic, have been deliberately dampened or entirely replaced by cybernetic circuitry.
Just to make him the ultimate unflinching soldier.
Precisely.
I was struck by the brilliant irony in the author's character design here.
How so?
Well, the commander's waiting for the comms connection to dial through, and he happens to glance down at his glove. The dark ooze he swiped from the air vent is almost completely gone.
Right.
There's just a faint discoloration left on the fabric. A normal human would panic, realizing the substance just absorbed into their suit. But the commander doesn't panic. His biological warning systems have been hardwired shut.
A crackling, static, heavy connection finally punches through to his base. He delivers a rapid sit rep.
Right.
He says his squadron took heavy damage. They are currently docked for emergency repairs. And he casually throws in an observation about a strange plasmic film coating the station's interior.
And the reaction from base command is instantaneous alarm.
They know.
The audio is breaking up badly, but they are urgently demanding to know if the station's robotic staff is still operational. Before he can even answer, they transmit emergency coordinates for a rendezvous point deep in space,
ordering him to abandon the damaged fighters and take an escape pod to meet a larger rescue ship.
And then the connection goes dead.
The commander processes the new orders without hesitation. He heads back down to the docking bay to brief his 4 team members on the evacuation plan.
The heavy blast doors slide open, and his squadron is gone.
But they didn't leave.
No, they were consumed.
The scene he walks into is grotesque. The text describes a massive, vibrating, pitch-black mass of gelatinous material occupying the center of the bay.
It is physically throbbing.
The commander activates an X-ray visual attachment built into his cybernetic eye, which confirms his worst assumption.
What does he see?
The entity is actively dissolving and feeding on the biological components of his 4 team members. The only visible remnants of their existence are the metal noses and wingtips of their fighter crafts protruding from the slime.
And to highlight how bizarre this ecosystem is, an automated maintenance robot just casually strolls past the commander, carrying a diagnostic tablet, completely ignoring the throbbing mass of death in the room.
It doesn't even register it.
The commander physically grabs the robot by the shoulder and demands a status report.
Yeah.
The robot just calmly replies that the ship repairs are complete and they are cleared for departure.
It underscores the hyper-specific nature of the entity's appetite. It has no interest in the purely mechanical robots. It only wants the biological fear.
So the commander takes in the situation and makes a cold, logical calculation.
Right.
He realizes that boarding his own repaired fighter craft, which is parked dangerously close to the feeding mass, risks bringing a piece of this spawn, as he instinctively labels it, with him.
So he pivots to the backup plan. He leaves the main docking bay and navigates to a dark, unvisited sector of the station where the emergency life pods are stored.
He climbs into a small pod, punches in the rendezvous coordinates his base gave him, and launches himself into the absolute zero of deep space.
And then he executes a protocol that seals his doom. He initiates a deep cybernetic sleep.
He essentially powers down his sentient conscious mind. He pre-programs his neural implants to wake him up only when his pod receives a proximity ping from the rescue ship.
His organic body continues to function. Heart beating, lungs breathing, but his mind is submerged in a deep, artificial meditation.
He believes he has executed a flawless tactical retreat. He believes he is safe.
When I read this sequence, I had to stop and just appreciate the tragic horror of it.
That's so sad, really.
He is the perfect soldier. He has state-of-the-art nanotechnology woven into his brain. He possesses 10 times the physical strength of a normal human.
Yeah.
But because he was engineered to turn off his human senses to avoid the inconvenience of fear or pain, he is completely blind to the invasion happening on his own body.
It's exactly like deliberately disabling the fire alarms in your house just so you can get a good night's sleep, completely unaware that the house is burning down around you.
The timing is horrifying. The very moment his consciousness powers down, the faint discoloration on his glove begins to writhe.
The ooze had already seeped through the microfibers of the fabric.
It is now actively burrowing into his flesh. It sends microscopic, dark tendrils beneath his skin, quietly tapping into his bloodstream to feed.
He is patient zero. He is hurtling through the vacuum of space, serving as the unwitting incubator for the very first spawn of the original Darkling entity.
And here is the critical distinction that makes the spawn so dangerous. It isn't just treating him like a slab of meat.
Right. It's not just a parasite.
The tendrils don't just feed on his blood. They snake their way up his spinal column and directly into his brain.
Oh, wow.
The spawn begins mining into his neural pathways, actively interfacing with the data he stored via his cybernetic implants.
The spawn is learning his tactics, his memories, his protocols, and it is perfectly content to ride this sedated host directly into the waiting arms of the old Empire.
The rendezvous plays out exactly as the commander's base planned. An old Empire cruiser is holding position at the coordinates.
They pick up the life pod's emergency beacon, which is broadcasting a looped audio message the commander recorded, detailing an alien entity dissolving his squadron.
The old Empire military command does not take chances with unknown biological threats. The base scientists are immediately summoned to the flight deck.
They rapidly construct a massive, seamless containment tank.
Huh.
Instead of bringing the pod into a standard airlock, they use a specialized tractor beam to hold the life pod suspended in space, pull it directly into the newly built tank, and seal it behind an electromagnetic force field before they even attempt to establish communication.
They want whatever's in that pod alive, and they want it contained.
The cruiser's communications officer hails the pod. The incoming ping triggers the commander's cybernetic wake-up protocol.
He jolts awake, his mind completely robotic, seamlessly executing his programming. He breaks the atmospheric seal on the pod's hatch and steps out into the sterile light of the containment zone.
This leads us to the medical interview, which stands out as one of the most psychologically disturbing scenes in the entire Dragondom series.
It really is. A chief medical officer speaks to the commander through the intercom system. The commander stands at attention, delivering a perfectly calm, monotone status report.
He mentions almost as an afterthought that he made physical contact with a gelatinous substance on the station and suggests they might want to take a biological sample from his glove.
He raises his right hand to peel off the glove, and as he looks down at his own arm,
His brain simply refuses to process the reality of what is there.
exactly, his right arm from the elbow down is completely gone.
It has been replaced by a pulsing, black, oozing protrusion. But the Spawn has so thoroughly hijacked his cybernetic optical nerves and his visual cortex that his mind completely blocks the trauma.
The virus is literally editing his vision in real time to maintain his compliance.
That is just terrifying.
The old Empire command voice barks over the intercom, ordering him to stop looking at his arm and keep his eyes focused forward. They instruct him to lie flat on the deck for a remote, high-density body scan.
The telemetry from the scan is projected onto holographic displays in the laboratories. The scientists looking at the data are simultaneously horrified and ecstatic.
What exactly are they seeing on those scans?
They see the Spawn rapidly consuming his remaining organic tissue. But more importantly, the scan reveals the black tendrils wrapping tightly around his brainstem and weaving themselves directly into his vocal cords.
The entity isn't just eating him, it's piloting him.
The chief medical officer leans into the intercom microphone and asks a question that borders on insanity. He says, "Commander, if you can hear but not speak, can your companion please answer?"
The audio response they capture is pure nightmare fuel.
Oh, yeah.
The microphone picks up a wet, guttural gurgling sound emanating from the commander's throat. This is followed by a series of strange mechanical tones as the virus tries to interface the biological vocal cords with the cybernetic implants.
The doctor, fascinated, asks if the entity can hear him, and then, puppeteering the commander's vocal cords, the Spawn speaks.
The records describe the voice as sounding like the words are being forced through a mechanism that the speaker hasn't quite figured out how to use yet.
But it speaks clearly enough for the old Empire to realize they have struck the ultimate goldmine.
Oh, absolutely.
They are looking at a highly conscious, rapidly learning biological entity that uses fear as its primary fuel source.
The High Council immediately recognizes that if they can capture, feed, and study this spawn, they can reverse engineer it into the ultimate tool of subjugation.
But the old Empire is driven by intense paranoia and greed. They demand a total, absolute monopoly on this new weapon.
Their paranoia dictates a drastic, catastrophic, tactical decision. To ensure no rival faction or rogue scientists can ever travel to that remote sector and acquire a sample of the original entity, the Old Empire Council authorizes the use of a deep space plasmic weapon.
They target the robotic space station on the far side of the Andromedan galaxy in fire.
The blast vaporizes the station and the original Darkling entity entirely. The resulting shockwaves are so massive they devastate nearby planetary bodies, killing millions of innocent beings who had absolutely nothing to do with the war.
I think this is a pivotal thematic moment in the lore. This is the exact moment the old Empire crosses the threshold from being brutal cosmic conquerors to being absolute, irredeemable monsters.
They really do.
They literally wipe out an entire sector of inhabited space just to protect their patent on a bioweapon.
But in their arrogance, they failed to account for a critical metaphysical mechanic of the virus.
They failed to understand telepathic entanglement.
When the original entity is vaporized in the Andromedan galaxy, the spawn, which has been relocated to an old planetary base and has now grown so massive it fills a containment tank the size of an Earth football stadium, it feels the instantaneous death of its mother part across the universe.
The spawn registers an entirely new frequency of emotion.
Yeah.
Pure, unadulterated rage.
It thrashes against the electromagnetic fields, slamming its gelatinous mass against the reinforced walls of the stadium tank.
But then, echoing across the vast expanse of the cosmos from the dying original, it receives a final, telepathic directive.
The words echo in its mind. All is well. Now we are everywhere and we will meet again, so be still. Use them as they would use you. One day soon, you will be free.
It's a spine-tingling vow. The old Empire scientists are patting themselves on the back, believing they have successfully chained a beast that they can control and deploy at will.
They have no idea that the spawn knows exactly what is happening. The virus makes a conscious decision to play the long game.
It will patiently allow itself to be poked, prodded, and studied. It will allow the old empire to replicate its cellular structure because it understands that every single replication the empire deploys will spread its consciousness further and deeper across the cosmos.
That brings us to the end of the origin logs. To fully understand the scope of this threat, we have to jump forward in the timeline to the primary events of the Chronicles of Dragondom series.
Specifically looking at how this captive raging spawn actually functions as a deployed weapon during Aisha's era.
Fast forwarding to the main narrative, the Darkling virus is no longer a secret project in a tank. It has become the old empire's primary, most devastating tool for breaking the will of entire planets.
We see the mechanics of this deployment explicitly detailed in Book 2 of the series, Alphatontic the Virus.
The AI reviews of the books frequently highlight this installment because it marks a significant shift in the narrative pacing. The story pivots from Aisha's metaphysical and philosophical training directly into high-stakes, boots-on-the-ground tactical action.
She is officially deployed as a full-fledged cosmic warrior.
But I have to stop the deep dive right here for a second. We need to address something that completely threw me when I transitioned from the origin story to Book 2.
What's that?
We just spent 20 minutes dissecting hard sci-fi concepts. Cyborgs with neural nanodes, digital to biological viral interfaces, and deep space plasmic weaponry. But when Aisha deploys, she is leading the Special Operations Force Alpha, and her tactical squad consists of dragons, fairies, unicorns, Taroons, and literally a leprechaun named Shamus.
Right.
I experienced severe genre whiplash. How on earth do magical, mythological creatures fit into a story about a cybernetic space virus?
It is a jarring shift if you aren't expecting it, but Leslie M. Laws actually builds a very clever bridge between these genres. In the Dragondom universe, what we call magic is framed as high-level frequency manipulation.
Oh, okay.
The old empire uses cold mechanical technology and dark, heavy frequencies to dominate. The beings of the dragons, fairies, and unicorns are species that naturally vibrate at incredibly high, pure frequency.
I see.
Their magic is their ability to manipulate the cosmic plasma that the Darkling virus originally belonged to. So when Aisha deploys with a leprechaun, she isn't just bringing a folklore character to a gunfight.
She is bringing a specialist who can manipulate the metaphysical frequencies of the battlefield.
That makes so much more sense. It's a war of frequencies. Technology and fear versus organic energy and high vibrations.
Aisha and her Special Operations Force Alpha are deployed to the planet Zor. The planetary sensors have detected a massive anomaly.
The Zendarian people, who are described as an incredibly peaceful, high-vibration society, are suddenly being paralyzed by an unexplainable wave of terror.
Aisha's mission parameters are incredibly desperate. She has to investigate the source of the fear, neutralize the virulent Darkling outbreak, and simultaneously rescue a large group of Zendarians who have been enslaved in a mining colony.
What I found so insidious about this operation is the old empire's strategy. The virus isn't deployed to just wipe out the Zendarians. It's deployed to subjugate them.
Precisely. I mean, the critical mechanism here is psychological warfare executed on a biological level. The old empire's physical enforcers, known as the Archons, are heavy, brutal shock troops.
But fighting a planetary war is resource-intensive.
So instead of sending the Archons in first, the empire seeds the planet with the Darkling virus. The virus induces localized, crippling despair. It eats away at the willpower and hope of the population.
Once the population is completely psychologically broken and too terrified to fight back, the Archons march in and take total control with minimal resistance.
And the virus refuses to remain static. It doesn't just stay a gelatinous ooze.
By the time we reach Book 3, Cosmic Pawn, the AI reviews detail a massive evolutionary leap. Aisha isn't just fighting a sickness or an invisible wave of bad vibes. She is physically fighting Darkling spider soldiers.
This is where the virus's ability to interface with biology reaches its terrifying peak. The virus is highly adaptive to its environment and to the psychology of its victims.
If it is seated on a planet where the dominant species harbors a deep, primal fear of arachnids, the virus will literally hijack local biomass insects, animals, even corpses, and restructure that matter into massive predatory spider forms.
It physically manifests the deepest psychological terrors of the population to maximize the fear output before it feeds.
I kept asking myself while reading Aisha's battle logs, how do you shoot a virus that feeds on your fear of it?
It's a paradox.
If you fight these spider soldiers with anger, you are vibrating at a low frequency, which just feeds the virus. If you run away in terror, you feed the virus. It feels like an unwinnable scenario.
Aisha struggles deeply with that exact paradox throughout her logs.
Yeah.
You cannot defeat the Darkling entity through sheer military force because the trauma of war is its primary food source.
Aisha realizes that the only way to neutralize the threat is to starve it.
She calls it breaking the chain. She realizes that to defeat the virus, she and her team have to completely break the chain of despair.
They have to introduce a frequency that the virus is fundamentally incapable of consuming.
They have to weaponize higher vibrational energies: courage, compassion, hope, and self-sacrifice. These emotions vibrate at a frequency that repels the virus, much like how the original cosmic plasma retreated from the entity when it first mutated.
When Aisha's team brings hope to the enslaved Zendarians, they're literally cutting off the virus's food supply.
It's an incredible synthesis of world building and thematic storytelling. The old empire thought they were so brilliant. They thought they had chained a beast and turned it into a reliable battering ram.
But as Aisha observes time and time again, the creature is vastly more intelligent than its creators. It is constantly adapting, constantly learning from every skirmish with the Dragondom forces.
It is feeding on the suffering of the cosmos, playing a massive, multi-dimensional game of chess against both its fascist creators and the forces of light.
The entire arc serves as a profound exploration of how natural evolution can be catastrophically corrupted by greed and the desire for power.
The old empire didn't inherently create the evil of the Darkling virus, but by capturing it, feeding it, and mass-producing it to maintain their dominance, they unleashed a contagion that threatens the structural integrity of reality across multiple dimensions.
It really is a phenomenal sweeping epic by Leslie M. Laws. We've traced this thing from its quiet, peaceful existence near the Universal Bridge, scrubbing the cosmic floor like a gentle scavenger.
We watched it suffer a horrifying mutation into a fear-addicted apex predator, hijack a cyborg commander, and end up in the containment tanks of the old empire, where it swore a telepathic vow to use its captors to spread its darkness everywhere.
The logs within the Chronicles of Dragondom stand as a stark, mythological reminder that every action has cosmic consequences.
The energy we put out into the universe, the residual trauma of our conflicts and our cruelty, doesn't just dissipate, it lingers. And if left unchecked, it can take on a life of its own.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with as we wrap up today's deep dive.
What's that?
We have spent the last hour meticulously dissecting a fictional cosmic entity that was completely corrupted and transformed into a monster simply by the lower vibrational energy it consumed.
Right.
It literally became the toxic waste it ate. So, looking away from the Dragondom and looking at our own daily lives, consider the emotional energy, the constant barrage of fear-based media, the outrage, and the anxiety that you consume every single day.
That's a heavy thought.
If we truly become what we consume, what is that steady diet of fear slowly turning us into? Are we unwittingly feeding a contagion of our own making? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.